Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week we look at the two Champions League semi-final showdowns. PSG and Arsenal, the deserved winners. Who are the biggest stars in the last four? To unpack the questions, I'm joined here with my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates. Alright, let's start with Bayern Munich versus Paris Saint-Germain. Happy or unhappy? We saw a tense tactical battle between the two sides over two legs, but at this stage of the competition, I always believe it's about one or two players that make the real difference. So Tianyu, who do you think was the true game changer over the two legs in that tie?
Well, first of all, what a semi-final, man. Two absolute heavyweight European sides, clashing with each other, just going at each other with elite players and brilliant coaches. Like you said, if I had to pick the biggest difference maker in the two legs, I would go with Kvaratskhelia. Back in his Napoli days, I honestly don't think enough people fully understood how good he could become. A lot of critics back then always said he only knew how to, cut inside and shoot, how his football style is so limited, and that defenders would eventually just figure him out. But ever since he joined PSG under Luis Enrique, he looks like a completely different player. I mean, right now, he's doing basically everything. Defensively, he works insanely hard. He's constantly pressing, tracking back, running nonstop for 90 minutes. I mean, offensively, he's also just a nightmare to defend. He's very quick, dribbling skill is unpredictable, and he combines so well with his teammates. And now he can even hurt you both by cutting inside and also delivering dangerous crosses with his weaker foot. So I think he's just fits PSG's system so perfectly. Against Bayern in both legs, he gave Leimer and Upamecano so many problems. They were mainly responsible for dealing with him, but most of the time, they, simply couldn't stop him from getting into dangerous areas. And if he keeps playing like this, I bet he'll become one of the best left wingers in the world.
Yes, what a player. But I think he's very lucky to meet Luis Enrique as his head coach. I think Enrique is the reason why he could evolve into a superstar right now. Brandon, who do you think changed the course of the games of the two legs in that tie?
Probably Luis Enrique, right? In terms of not players, but I think you're right, Yang Guang, in terms of his tactics. I think that both legs, were a great display of the evolution of modern football's attacking style, and something that Tianyu has been talking about for some while as well, something that they're desperate for at Real Madrid, and what they were hoping to get out of players like Mbappe and Vinicius was that positional fluidity. And I don't think anybody does it better than Doué, Kvaratskhelia, and Dembele. So I think it's very difficult to choose out of that front three. And I think that's a huge testament to Luis Enrique's tactics and also his ability to get the best out of his players and have, all 11 players playing together rather than having 8 players supporting 3 players in Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi as they had in the past, which didn't yield as much success as they would have liked. I still think Dembele was still slightly more important than Kvaratskhelia. I think Kvaratskhelia was probably like you guys have mentioned, the most probably someone that stood up the most and delivered his best performances and showcased what he could do at the highest level. And that was unexpected, I think, for many. And I think this was the season where he really stepped up to the plate and showed the world what a world-class player he is at a similar level, not quite as close as I believe to Dembele, because I just think Dembele is still so decisive, and I still think everything still sort of revolves around him. Even though PSG really is a unit, I think that they really do flow as a unit at their best when Dembele is at his most dangerous. I mean, obviously scored crucial goals in both legs, including the decisive early goal against. This is going to be a long chat for you, Yang Guang. Sorry about this, but we have to talk about it. In that semi-final, and one good thing about that game, an incredible strike from Harry Kane. That touch and strike with his left foot was immense. One of the best finishes I've seen of the season, and I think that he's still has a shot for the Ballon d'Or. I think it's going to be heavily dependent on how England do at the World Cup and also if PSG can go on and win the Champions League, and if Dembele can potentially even score in the final. But yeah, I think it's just how Dembele has this ability, had the ability over the two legs, I think, to destabilize Bayern tactically. You know, whenever Bayern pressed high, Dembele was often the beginning and the end outlet that really punished them. I think that he was the one that started the counter attacks, often finished them, and was, the linchpin that I think created space for Due and Kvaratskhelia to also have the ability to showcase what they can do. I think that I think even if Dembele wasn't scoring as many goals as people expected, or showcasing what he can do with the ball, I think that the attention that he drew from some of Bayern's defense really created so much space for the other attackers in PSG's lineup.
Right. Just imagine Dembele wins another Ballon d'Or.
Wow.
How would Mbappe fans react to that?
Yeah, that would be harsh.
Well, from my side of things, I wouldn't say the referees changed the game, but they definitely impacted the course of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 handballs and an early offside decision.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced at all. If it's not the wrong referees, it's the wrong rules, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, I still think Bayern lost the game themselves because they underperformed, rather than, the referees cost them the victory. But looking at the bigger picture of the full 180 minutes between PSG and Bayern, Tianyu, what's your overall take? Do you believe this tie represents the absolute highest club football in 2026?
Well, honestly, this was probably one of the best Champions League semifinals I've ever watched in the last decade. Not just because of the goals, it was like the clash of two modern football giants playing aggressive, fearless football. I mean, both PSG and Bayern, they rely heavily on wing play. Both sides press hard, both of them can dominate possession when needed. But the interesting part is how they execute those ideas with different kinds of players and different kinds of tactics. I know you have a lot to say about some of the controversial refereeing decisions in the second leg. But overall, I think this was still two elite teams playing at an insanely high level. And it felt like a boxing game where there's non-stop exchange of punches. And honestly, it reminded us why football is supposed to be exciting. I mean, we've become so used to seeing knockout football being super cautious. Two teams sitting back, scared of making mistakes. But PSG and Bayern basically told us, forget about that. Let's just, attack and score goals. Whoever scored the more goals wins. So that's what made the tie so refreshing, I would say. You really have to give credit to Luis Enrique. This PSG side is honestly terrifying. What's scary about them is that they can actually beat you in 2 ways. 1, they can outscore you with their incredible firepower. And 2, they can completely lock the game down defensively. Before the second leg, we talked about how, missing Hakimi could seriously hurt PSG. But again, they proved how complete this team can be. Early in the game, you could see Nuno Mendes was actually struggling a little bit when defending against Michael Olise. And he was even picking up an early yellow card. But as the game moves on, Kvaratskhelia immediately started helping him and just double team Olise and just taking pressure off Mendes. And it wasn't just him. Ousmane Dembele was defending. Due was defending. Everyone else was working for the team. This is just incredible. And honestly, as a Real Madrid fan, watching this PSG side just kind of reminded me of Kylian Mbappe. People on Chinese social media joke that Mbappe is probably the last person who wants to see PSG raise the final trophy on the Champions League. Yeah, but jokes aside, I think what separates players like Ousmane Dembele right now is his willingness to sacrifice for the team. I think that's something football at the highest level demands right now. Talent alone isn't enough.
When I look back at that 2 legs, I think the first leg kind of misled fans about the gap between the two sides, because I think PSG was apparently the better side between the two, and they were the side to control the pace of the game.
Yeah.
When they wanted an open game, it ended up 5-4, and when they wished to slow things down, Bayern could barely create chances, and it ended 1-1 at Allianz Arena. It seems like a 6-5 aggregate victory for PSG, and it's very close, but it's not. In the second leg, it was like they were suffocated to death by PSG. And on the managerial level, I think Vincent Kompany is no match for Luis Enrique at the moment. It seems like to me that Kompany always believes that if Bayern plays its best football, however the opponents play, they are invincible. It's a very huge ego, and it's very dangerous, I think, because it could easily lead to mistakes, and Bayern paid for it. I mean, the Champions League knockout stages is like the NBA playoff series. In game 1, you make mistakes. In game 2, you fix them.
Yeah.
But no for Bayern. I don't see Bayern making targeted adjustments on key PSG players. The best example is, again, Kvaratskhelia. He made almost the same move in 2 legs and got 2 goals. He exploited the high pressing of Bayern and charged towards the behind Bayern's defense line like a backdoor cut in basketball games. The first leg, Stanisic fell for it, and in the second leg, similar move, similar position, no lesson learned whatsoever. Upamecano lost him again. How on earth did Bayern step into the same river twice in just over 2 weeks? I don't get it. That's the thing. I think Kompany just focused too much on Bayern's self-performance. Then he sometimes ignores how the opponents will play.
Yeah.
I think he didn't study enough.
It's difficult. It's difficult at a big club like that, though, Yangguang, because I think with all credit to PSG, and I think they have now announced themselves as one of the elite clubs in Europe. But when you think of a club like Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Juventus, Barcelona, teams like this that have such a DNA and have had so many decades of success, I think a lot of the coaches kind of have to, when they sign up, they have to be focused on, this is the way that we play. We're not going to be concerned about the opponents, and we can't let opponents dictate the way that we play. And that seems to be a legacy club problem.
I agree.
That maybe doesn't work anymore in modern football, because yes, you do have to, like you said, you do have to be very hyper-focused on the way that you play and don't let other teams change that. But when you come up against another elite team, even if they're not a historically elite team, you might have to make tactical adjustments to deal with a team that is playing the best football in the world right now.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that teams that had so many decades of success, like Bayern Munich and Real Madrid in particular, they're not able to do that as effectively as lesser historic teams. And maybe someone like Luis Enrique takes advantage of that, which maybe he wouldn't have done at Barcelona, but he can do at PSG, because PSG are kind of writing their own DNA right now.
Yeah.
PSG are far behind Bayern Munich in terms of legacy success. And I think they fully took advantage of that. And maybe Kompany at Bayern doesn't have either the allowance or the experience to deal with that when he's also the head boss at such a massive, massive club. Not that PSG isn't, but PSG doesn't even come close to the legacy that Bayern and the prestige that Bayern has right now.
Yeah, and it's those little adjustments that makes the difference in the cost you the victory eventually. Before we move on, here's a quick review of the biggest sports headlines in China and around the world for the past week. Paris Saint-Germain booked a place in the Champions League final against Arsenal after a 1-1 draw with Bayern Munich in the second leg secured a 6-5 aggregate victory for the French side. Head coach Luis Enrique praised his players for their defensive resilience and composure under pressure.
In my opinion, it is clear it's time enjoying reaching the final. It was a very high-level match. I think both teams improved the way we defended. When we scored, we were more calm than usual when playing this type of match.
PSG is hoping to become only the second club in the modern Champions League era after Real Madrid to win back-to-back European crowns. Arsenal is through to the Champions League final for the first time in 2 decades after Bukayo Saka fired them to a hard-fought 1-0 win over Atletico Madrid. Head coach Mikel Arteta hailed the moment.
I cannot be happier, prouder for everybody that is involved in this football club. The manner that we got received outside the stadium already was special and unique.
Meantime, 3 more wins from Arsenal's remaining Premier League games would secure the first league title since 2004. Inter Milan clinched its 21st Serie A title with 3 rounds to spare after securing a 2-0 victory over Parma. It's Inter's second league title in 3 years. The victory also won Christian Chivu's first trophy as a manager. Real Madrid defender Alvaro Carreras has denied reports of a dressing room bust-up, saying recent claims about him do not correspond to reality. Spanish media reported that Carreras had been struck by teammates Antonio Rudiger following an argument in training. Carreras responded with a statement on social media saying the matter had been resolved. The 23-year-old has fallen out of favor with coach Alvaro Arbeloa in recent weeks. Wu Yizhe has become China's second world snooker champion after a thrilling final frame showdown with Sean Murphy at Crucible Theatre. At just 22, Wu is the second youngest world champion ever, trailing only Stephen Hendry, who won at 21 in 1990.
It was incredible, something I've never felt before. It's that real sense of happiness you get when you truly love something and work hard to achieve it. For me, that feeling is what matters most. It's what guides me.
Wu's victory followed the triumph of compatriots Zhao Xintong, who was crowned world champion last year. The Orlando Magic has fired head coach Jamal Mosley after a blowout playoff loss in Detroit ended their season. Mosley, hired as Magic head coach in 2021, previously served as an assistant in Denver, Cleveland, and Dallas. His 5-season tenure was the longest for Magic coach since Stan Van Gundy, who led the team to the 2009 NBA Finals. Now, switching to the other semi-final, Arsenal is finally into the Champions League final after 20 years after they beat Atletico Madrid 2-1 on aggregates. So Tianyu, first, put this in emotional terms. What does it mean to the club, to the fans, and even the Premier League as a whole? And is this the validation of Mikel Arteta's project, or is it the rewards for smart recruitment in the summer, or a bit of knockout luck?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a massive milestone for Arsenal. And honestly, as a Madrid fan who's also followed Arsenal for years, I think it's been a long journey for them. People know how rough the last 2 decades have been for them. I think I still remember it was like around 2015 to 2019, which is the time I attended college. At that time, whenever you open Chinese social media, there were endless jokes about how Arsenal always finished 4th place every single season in the Premier League. They kind of played beautiful football, but they always seemed to lack the squad depth and the star power needed to truly compete with those powerhouses. Mikel Arteta came in and the club started just investing heavily, and step by step they became stronger. It finally feels like all those years of rebuilding finally paid off. Even domestically, despite a few shaky performances in recent matches, they've still been one of the most consistent teams throughout the whole season. People joke that, Arsenal are becoming kind of ugly winners for how dangerous they are from set pieces and corners. But honestly, I think Arsenal fans just couldn't care less about that. I mean, winning is winning. In fact, they're kind of leading a new trend now. Every team now spends more time working on set pieces and corners because Arsenal just showed how valuable they can be. And whenever Arsenal gets a corner right now, I think you really feel like, something might happen. If they end up winning the Champions League through, excellent defending and, deadly set pieces, I mean, who cares how pretty the process is?
Yeah, the history will only remember the winners.
Yes, at the end of the day, trophies are what matters the most.
Okay. I still recall the last Champions League final Arsenal play that was against the Barcelona in 2006. It was still around the peak time of Arsene Wenger's beautiful Arsenal.
Yeah.
They were sharp, they were creative. They got guys like Thierry Henry, Fabregas, Van Persie, Pierre. And but all of a sudden, Jens Lehmann's opening red card ruined their whole season of efforts. And after that Champions League final loss, Arsenal experienced a long-term slide. And now, finally, they crawled back from that hole. But this Arsenal is nothing like what they were 20 years ago. As you mentioned, Mikel Arteta really plays the pragmatic football to the utmost. Maybe this different playing style could finally bring the trophy back to the North London club. Maybe. Brandon, you mentioned PSG is writing its DNA, and this seems like Mikel Arteta is rewriting Arsenal's DNA. Do you think this version of Arsenal is more likely to actually lift the trophy?
I hope not, but it does seem like on paper, and at least in terms of the results that they're producing, things have really turned around for them. And I think Mikel Arteta's done an incredible job with the budget that he has and the players that he's gotten together. And I think that he's also one of the very few managers that seems to take players and make them better. No one exemplifies that better than Declan Rice. I think, at West Ham, he was an incredible player and everybody wanted him. And, I think a couple of people were surprised that he made the move to Arsenal. And now he's really showcased that he's in the top 5 best midfielders in the world, if not the best defensive midfielder in the world right now. Bukayo Saka is also just showing incredible leadership on both ends of the pitch. I know Victor Gyökeres has gotten a lot of stick this season, but he also seems to be really improving and becoming an important player in the latter stages of the season. I know he's on the bench sometimes and, he's not a guaranteed starter, but he does seem to have an impact whenever he plays. So yeah, no, it's a completely different Arsenal side compared to 20 years ago. But I think that's also, a testament to Arteta and I guess the running of the club, because I think they've gone through incredible difficulties over the last decade, but they seem to be in a position where they are rebuilding, like you've said, Yang Guang, starting to create their own new legacy. And it's taken a long time, but it seems like they are being rewarded for patience and for trusting a very young, inexperienced manager, again, in Mikel Arteta, and, giving him the reins and letting him have full control of the club in the way that they play. And it really does seem to have yielded excellent results. I mean, we'll still have to wait and see what happens in that final. I know, Yang Guang, you'll be backing Arsenal, but I really do hope that PSG do win, because the only teams that I would really hate to see win the Champions League are Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City, and Barcelona. So I really hope PSG, and I do actually have a bit of a soft spot for PSG because I just love the city of Paris. So if it wasn't going to be Bayern, I would love to see PSG go back to back. And I think Dembele is just such a fantastic player.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring the South African rugby team into it again. And this is something that we get criticized for a lot. And you're so right, Tian. We don't care. We don't care if we win ugly. Winning is winning. We don't care if other teams hate us.
Yeah.
And I think Arsenal fans are very similar. I think South Africa, again, gets a lot of flack for being just physically strong, almost strangling teams, being very dominant at set pieces. I mean, you were saying all of those things. I was like, wow, that really does sound like the South African rugby team. And I was like, maybe that's why other teams hate us, because we win. But the way that we win is sometimes considered like anti-beautiful sport. We do it in such a physical dominance sort of ugly way. And as much as I hate Arsenal, that really does sound very similar to the way that the South African rugby team plays. And I get it. I think that at the end of the day, winning is winning. And I think it's going to be a great clash of styles in that final.
Okay, finally the million-dollar question: who finally lifts the trophy this year? We've seen both semifinals. We know the forms. We know the injuries, the psychological edges. So can you very briefly give us your prediction?
Well, on paper, PSG definitely has the edge. They look unstoppable. But this is just the Champions League final. Anything can happen, and logic doesn't apply here. So yeah, I think, and also don't forget about what happened in the Club World Cup. Everything was before the game. Almost nobody would believe that Chelsea would lift the final trophy, would beat PSG, but they pulled it off. I mean, that's just football. So you can't explain it in logic or numbers. So on paper, PSG are the favorites. But once it's the Champions League, old predictions kind of go out of the window. So one big moment, one mistake, one counterattack, everything can change. So yeah, deep in my heart, my heart goes to Arsenal.
Okay. Brandon, what's your score prediction? Anything bold from your side? What does your gut tell you about this?
Unfortunately, my gut tells me that I think Arsenal are going to get the win. I just have this feeling that they want to prove all the haters wrong, and they've been through so many ups and downs this season, being called bottle jobs and this and that. And all of a sudden, things were looking so dire for them like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now all of a sudden, they're in the final of the Champions League, and it looks like they're definitely going to win the Premier League too. So I think it's actually going to be a big scoring final. I think that it's very difficult to call out a winner, even though I do slightly lean towards Arsenal. But I think that whoever wins, I think is actually going to win easily. Because I think that one team is going to deal with the pressure of the final much better than the other.
Right, let's see how the final will be played out. Hopefully the two teams will offer us another Champions League classic in Budapest. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.